Good evening. Welcome to the December 20th, 2016 meeting of the Milford Planning and Zoning Commission. If I can ask you at this time to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we please have roll call from left to right?
Richard Lutz.
Mike Dolan.
Carl S. Moore.
Scott Marlowe.
Tom Nickel.
Tom Panzella.
Jim Quish.
And I'm Anthony Sutton, Board Chairman, and we are joined this evening by David Sulkus, our City Planner, and Phyllis Leggett, our Board Clerk. Before we begin going through the agenda this evening, a couple of announcements, changes to the agenda. Public hearing on 110 Shelland Street will not be heard this evening. That has been put over to the Tuesday, January 3rd, 2017 meeting. And we will not be hearing the public hearing on 604 Naugatuck Avenue. That will be taken up at a meeting date to be determined. The first item on the agenda is the CGS 824 approval, and this is for the acquisition of approximately 6 acres of land located at 130-150 Boston Post Road for the purpose of constructing a new police station. Good evening, Attorney Bertram.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is John Bertram, the City Attorney. With me tonight I have Police Chief Keith Mello and the Building Committee Chair Richard Smith. Before you is a conceptual of the property that we are asking for your referral, positive referral to the Board of Aldermen for the city to acquire 6 acres on 130-150 Boston Post Road. If you take a moment, there's a lot line adjustment to be made from the proposed seller. The background to this is the building committee. If you have questions, Mr. Smith can answer, but the building committee, which was put together, I believe, a year ago, took a look for sites, whether to build on-site, the existing police department, or to build on a new site over the course of the past year. There was a unanimous vote by the building committee to purchase this property. The bonding approval was heard last night by the Board of Finance, and that was approved and is scheduled to be heard by the Board of Aldermen in January. As part of any acquisition of land by the city pursuant to 8-24, we have to come before this board. So that's the approval in a nutshell. By way of history, the existing police department has or a new police department building has been part of the capital improvement plan for at least 20 years. The capital improvement plan is incorporated with the plan of conservation and development, and I believe that's your charge as a board to ensure that any disposition or acquisition of land is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. And given that a new police station has been part of the capital improvement plan, we believe it to be so. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Chief Mello's here, or Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Attorney Bertram. Are there any questions for Attorney Bertram, Chief Mello, or Mr. Smith? Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, those 6 acres, is there any wetland in there?
Not that we're aware of. There's wetland to the rear, but not part of the 6 acres that we will be utilizing.
This is still going through inland wetland then, right?
Yes, this is this is just the 824 referral. If there's a need to get inland wetlands, it will still go through that review, but as I indicated, this is just the first step to get authority to enter in these negotiations and consummate a sale.
Are there additional questions for Attorney Bertram, Chief Mello, or Mr. Smith? Seeing none, does anyone wish to make a motion relative to the 824 Mr. Quish.
I would make a motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Nichol. Does anyone wish to be heard on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question to a vote. All in favor? All opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Attorney Burchett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief
Happy
Miller.
holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next item on the agenda is new business, and that is 335 Meadowside Road, Zone R 12.5, petition of Thomas Lynch Esquire for a minor modification to a site plan under 8-30G on map 21, block 213, parcel 31, of which 335 Meadowside LLC is the owner. Good evening, Attorney Lynch. Good evening, Attorney Lynch.
Mr. Sutton, how are you? Members of the board, for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. My office is located, as you know, here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street, and I'm here tonight with my client Buddy Field and his cousin Chris Field, who are the developers of the project at 335 Meadowside Road. As you know, we came before the board last year, and the board approved a modified version of the application that we had initially submitted to the board. The end result was approval of a 5-building project on this site consisting of 15 units. The project has been constructed during the course of this past year, and my client has come before you tonight with an application for certain minor modifications to the site plan, and we'll go into each and every one of those as we make our presentation and basically come up with the logic and the reason behind that. But there was a modified site plan that was submitted to you with this application. It was prepared by Washington Cambyses, and as you can see on sheet 1 of the site plan, the major amendment that is seen on site is the fact that a good portion of the paved area has now been improved with pavers in front of the units. The plans were modified to aesthetically create the appearance with the pavers of a, certainly a more pleasing site. Pictures have been submitted to you with the handout that my client just gave to him. But basically there were 5 changes. There was the pavers, the sidewalk in the front center of each unit was shortened to add plantings, which we've shown on page 3 of the modified site plan. There's a number of trees that we've actually added to the project so that by shortening the island, it creates an area for the greater plantings, and those are shown on page 3 of the amended site plan that was given to you. There was also a modification that was made, and when I use the term modification, it wasn't anything that changed the drainage plan on the property. It actually improved it. There was a swale with certain elevations that have been modified to the rear of the property to prevent water runoff from this property to the adjacent site on the easterly side of Meadowside Road. And also there were additionally 3 yard drains that were added to the to the site, again, to address any drainage issues relative to the adjacent property. But the swale was part of the original plan that we submitted to you last year, the site plan that was approved, so that the 3 yard drains that have been added to the plan are actually modifications that improve the retention of water on the site. And just to buttress that, one of the items that I believe was made part of your package that Phyllis got to you before tonight, it is part of our handout that we gave to you, was a 2-page summary of the review of the revisions by Greg Podlusky, our city engineer, briefly stating he's gone through all of the elements of the revised site plan. He addressed that the site is presently graded. There's no provision for an additional swale. He states, as the site is presently graded, runoff from the grassed area between the buildings and the easterly property line drains via surface flow onto abutting property. The revised plans will reestablish the approved swale to intercept the surface runoff prior to its introduction to the abutting property. So he addresses how that swale will basically catch water as it may flow onto the abutting property of Denise Doucette. And Greg finalizes his review. Item number 7, the revised plans actually improve upon the drainage in this area relative to the approved plans. The proposed plans introduce 3 yard drains into the swale to intercept channelized runoff and redirect it to the stormwater mitigation system. The approved plans have no provision for collection of channelized runoff within the swale. Therefore, based upon the approved plans, all channelized runoff contained within the swale would surface discharge in the vicinity of the southeasterly property corner, where it would flow across the sidewalk to the gutter of Meadowside Road. Greg concludes by saying that the proposed plans will correct the existing grading, bringing the site into substantial compliance with the original approved plans. The proposed revised plans will improve upon the original approved plan in that the proposed yard drains will intercept channelized runoff within the swale. My recommendations to you are as follows. I find that the proposed changes are acceptable, and any approval should be conditioned to require strict compliance with the revised plans. So, as I said, these plans were submitted to David. His administrative review is in your file as well. I don't believe I need to go into that in any greater detail maybe than he will, but these plans were distributed to the city engineer, to the fire marshal, and reviewed by the city planner. Favorable recommendations across the board for all of these changes. The last thing that we had proposed, once the buildings were up, aesthetically, the way that the plans were drawn by the architect, there was a 3rd level window that was actually being located in a closet. It served no useful purpose. So in the handout that we gave to you, we're showing an additional change that we've requested is to have those that window relocated so that there are now 2 windows on the 2nd level and a smaller 3rd window on the 3rd level. Again, aesthetically more efficient. It's makes more common sense actually than having the windows laid out the way that they were. And upon staff review, we included that request, even though it has nothing to do with the zoning regulations. It is part of the site plan, the floor plans that were submitted to you, so it was felt that that should be submitted as part of our request to you as well. So with that said, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. The site is basically complete. My client is ready to start leasing these units and getting COs, and we'd like to have a favorable review upon this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch. Mr. Sulkus, do you have a comment on the petition?
You have my report. If you have any questions on it, I'd be glad to answer anything. I think the proposed improvements and changes that are being asked for, I think actually make the project a better project.
Thank you, Mr. Sulkus. Are there any questions for Attorney Lynch or Mr. Sulkus at this time? Mr. Quish?
Question about the handout. Is this a photograph or a computer model of the pavers in place?
I can't see what you're...
Did you know what was handed
No,
out?
those are the pavers as they exist.
They've already put them in?
Yes,
And so you're asking for approval to change from concrete to pavers, but the pavers are in already?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And second question is on the eastern border. My understanding is that there's an elevation change of about 4 feet. Is that accurate, or am I misinformed?
Well, I figured one way or the other that was going to come up. You have the other hand up. So I believe the board members were sent an email with some pictures by the abutting property owner complaining about the elevation as it was at the time certain pictures were taken that he took, and feeling that that was going to result in increased water runoff onto his property. Well, the fact is now this has been completed. I was going to submit these pictures to you if there were any questions or if the public was going to speak as to that issue. But basically, the pictures that you saw in the handout that the neighbor gave to you prior to tonight's public hearing, these pictures show the end result. In other words, the grading has been leveled, there will be fencing along the property, and this is what Greg Podleski was talking about in his review. And again, I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. I'd be happy to hand this out to you, Jim, and then you could pass it to the other.
Yeah, please do. I mean, I'm not talking about a picture, I'm talking about an elevation.
And while that's being reviewed, Mr. Sulkus, it's my understanding that before the board this evening, with regard to this item of business, the board has the choice whether to approve the modifications to the site plan without the benefit of public hearing, or we can choose to have a public hearing be held at a future date on the proposed amendments. Is that correct?
If you choose to open this up for public comment, I mean, you could open it up tonight. If you're going to do a formal public hearing, then we would have to advertise it. It would have to be for a future date. I mean, typically, just historically, minor modifications to plans, we haven't done public hearings for them, but that's up to you. You can do what you like.
Thank you, Mr. Sulkus. Are there additional questions for
Yes.
the applicant, Mr.
Yes.
Lutz?
Does the elevation on the eastern side equal the original plans for the site?
Yes. With the additional drains put in as well, for actually added drainage protection.
So that it wasn't increased or anything from the original plans?
Correct.
Mr. Quish?
So the question is whether the public has an opportunity to weigh in on this is one that I guess is answered by, if there are people here that wish to speak, we could use tonight to hear them, and if there aren't, then maybe it should be advertised so that, I mean, I don't think it's a big deal, but they are the neighbors, and they have had a 830G application that they were unhappy with, and to give up something that they have an ability to speak to, I think it's our responsibility to let them be heard, whether it's tonight or whether it's another night. It's just the voice that the public should have.
Are there further questions? Mr. Dolan?
Can I just comment on that, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Attorney Lynch.
There's nothing that's being done on this site. This project is being completely built in accordance with the plans that were approved. There's some changes, i.e. the pavers, and I quite honestly don't know what the public could comment on as it relates to the concrete pavers on the site. I could understand where the neighbors could be concerned about drainage issues, but keep in mind, we're building better than what the approved plans called for. There's 3 additional drains that have been put in there. So just following the logic behind your point, Jim, you know, we're building the project with 3 additional drains over and above what was approved. So.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch. Mr. Dolan.
Excuse me. I was looking at the handout from Mr. Janice as well. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. He said something about when the sidewalk and apron was put in near his house, that now it's not level, and that that's causing some issues with his vehicles going in and out.
I'm going to let Buddy Field address that.
Okay.
Because
Thanks.
now the final driveway apron has been put in. The complaints came in before the apron was even finished, so.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Buddy Field. I'm one of the principals of 335 Meadowside LLC. The aprons, the previous apron the neighbors had was actually not built to code or built to standard. It was an asphalt apron that was basically jury-rigged years ago. So what had happened was in the process of getting the approvals, we had to run new sidewalks and 2 brand-new aprons. These aprons were laid out by the City of Milford, by the Public Works Department, by the Engineering Department. They gave us the specifications to follow and at what heights and elevations to follow. So they are built exactly to their specifications. They had come out, and in this handout I could give you, it has their report and it has their approval. So they've come out, they've actually looked at the aprons and they've approved them. Think about it. They're going to come out ahead of time to look at the aprons. They're going to say everything is okay. We're going to pour the aprons. They're going to come out after the fact. If something is wrong, they're going to make us jackhammer it up and replace it. That's how the City of Milford works. They want to make sure everything is correct in the city. And we also mill and paved the road recently, and we also had Chris Saley out there looking at everything. So this isn't something where we just haphazardly decide this is where the apron goes and whatever it may be. This was dictated by the City of Milford Engineering Department. And I have a handout here that shows their reports, their follow-ups. In Mr. Denise's comments, he also said there's ponding there. You'll see there's comments from the City Engineering Department. They went out on 2 separate times when it was raining, and they did not notice any standing water or ponding or pooling. So it's the City of Milford's report and their writing, not mine. So unfortunately what happens is that when these things are built, you know, when we come across and we build this project, they have to be built to today's standards. And that's how it is. So we're not going to construct something, and the city's not going to allow something to be constructed that isn't up to their standards.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Are there additional questions for the applicants at this time? Mr. Nichol.
Yeah, let's go back to the original planning of this. So I think what I'm hearing here is the original planning didn't come up to spec, and now modifications had to be made to adjust that, which included the drainage and the driveway. And I've been to the site several times because I can attest that you can run up and down over the curbs and aprons. And I understand that it's being built better. But what I don't understand is why we're getting this action tonight when it was done a month ago, 2 months ago.
The reason for that is...
Yeah, let me finish, please.
Okay.
And if you're dealing with the city engineer and he's not dealing with David Sulkus and he's not relaying it to us, you know, you're giving us a bill of goods here that is done, and it's done better than the original, which is fine. But I cannot understand why we're getting it tonight and have not been thoroughly informed that this was going to take place. That's my question to both of you. The second part of this, you want to move some windows around, go do it. I don't care about that. But I'm questioning the original planning versus what you came across in the building of this, and then you made modifications, and This board didn't know anything about it unless you took a couple rides down and you saw what was going on. So that's the explanation I want.
Can I answer that now? Okay. The reason why is because of that gentleman sitting right there. You have a city planner. You have a staff person who reviews plans and works with builders during the course of construction. And many times during the course of construction, certain things are amended and they're of a minor nature and they're signed off administratively, and that's why it doesn't come to you. And I can't answer the question as to why this came to you. I suspect it had something to do with the next door neighbor who was coming down to the Parsons building on a regular basis and making complaints, and it went from there. But to answer your direct question, Tom, it's because of the fact that these matters are normally handled administratively and they don't come back to the board.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch. Mr. Quish.
So at this point, it is in front of the board, and I would respectfully ask that we have an avenue for the public to speak, whether it's tonight or whether we put it on another meeting agenda. We don't, in 830G, obviously we have certain state restrictions where we can deny it and we lose in court. This is a different situation. We don't have to approve it. It may be smarter, it may be better. I don't really know. I would like to hear the neighbors who have been severely disappointed that this is happening in their backyard. And so even this minor modification, I think their voice should be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Quish. Are there any additional questions for the petitioner at this time? Seeing none, does anyone wish to make a motion relative to this matter? Mr. Quish.
I would make a motion that we put this on a public hearing calendar in the future.
Is there a second? Mr. Lutz. Does anyone wish to be heard on the motion? Mr. Marlowe.
My question would be, Mr. Pushin, is basically, we're not changing plans here. What's being done, I'm not sure, again, the public hearing, I get the sensitivity of it that we want to do that, but what are they going to actually be commenting on? Because all you're going to do is be bringing up stuff that they may not have liked in the first place about the development, but we haven't, as far as I know, or I'm being told, we haven't changed anything on the site plan, so I'm not sure why we would want to have another public hearing.
Mr. Quish?
So, and I understand that there's, you know, at one point the cows are out of the barn and the project is built. But the reality is that it has changed, and I don't know that if it's to the neighbor's liking, the changes may very well be better as the applicant has spoken towards. I'm just not sure the neighbors feel that way. And the fact that they were heard and denied because of the court doesn't mean that we can't hear them on this. And at one point, I think their voice should be louder than the developer's voice. So they should be heard one way or another, either tonight. If someone wants to make a motion to hear them tonight, there's probably somebody in the audience. I would kick it down the road and I would have it be advertised so that the people can come and at least have a voice in this. It's not unreasonable. If they're asking us for something, we don't have to automatically say yes to this because of 830G. They've already got it built. They're looking to change the story. Whether it's a good change or not, they're telling us it is. The neighbors may have a different opinion. And they're the ones that got kind of overshadowed by the state law, and they should have a voice in any change, in my mind.
Mr. Dolan.
So my feeling is that the public should certainly probably have some valid concerns over the way that this has been built so far. And I'm not necessarily opposed to another public hearing. I'm just not sure that that's the best avenue. I know what we've done in the past is try to, I mean, this project is getting built no matter what. I mean, that's pretty clear. And I know with some other recent projects that have come before the board, we've tried to encourage both sides to talk amongst themselves. I know that might not be possible in this case, given the bad blood between the sides in the past, but I don't know if there's any way that they could, so they could work together to try and make this project the best that it can be for everybody. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. Tom, I don't know if you think that's possible to have a sit-down with some neighbors and try to work this out. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here.
I think it's one neighbor. It's one particular neighbor who happens to be here tonight, by the way.
Respectfully, I'm not sure if it's just one neighbor. I do see a few other people here, and I know that this is, I mean, I think one of the reasons that more people might not be here is because there wasn't a public hearing, so they could have just been sitting in the crowd and not have their voices heard, and maybe that's not why they're not here.
Okay.
I feel like other people might have some valid concerns. So I don't know if the public hearing is the way to go. I'd be more inclined to see if you guys can kind of mediate this between yourselves with the understood, but there's got to be some good faith. There's got to be good faith on both sides, and also that's including the neighbor's side, who have to understand that this project is going to be built, but maybe we can come to some sort of agreement with everybody that is going to be built in the best interest of everyone. That's just my thoughts.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I just believe that I would like to handle this administratively. It seems as though Mr. Sulkus and the staff knows the ins and outs of this project, and they would know more than probably what the neighbors are going through right now. So my best bet was just vote today and just handle everything administratively.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the motion to assign this to a public hearing? Seeing none, we'll call the question to a vote. All in favor of scheduling this for a public hearing?
1, 2, 3, 4.
No, you can finish. You can finish with the vote, sorry.
All opposed? Are there any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain just because I don't know if I'm not, like I said, I'm not necessarily against a public hearing, and if it was either vote tonight or public hearing, I'd probably vote for a public hearing, but I'm wondering if there's some other way to do it. I mean, I don't know if anybody else feels the same way about me as to trying to get these sides to mediate themselves.
Clearly, if you schedule it for a public hearing, that puts it off for a couple of weeks, and believe me, I'm the type of person always that tries to mediate an issue. So between now and the next meeting, if upon discussion with my client, there's an opportunity to meet with some of the neighbors to see if we can find a middle ground here, that could come back to you at the next meeting.
Well, we would certainly encourage that. Thank you, Attorney Lynch. And I guess we didn't specify when it would come back for a public hearing, but I suppose the next meeting on January 3rd would be the first opportunity. So the motion passes. Thank you very much, Attorney Lynch.
So I'm a little confused. What was the vote? Because Michael abstained.
4 in favor, 3 against.
Okay.
And 1 abstention.
So is there enough time to advertise for a public hearing for
No.
January 3rd?
I'll have to look.
I don't think there is.
It'll have to be for the second meeting in January. And Mr. Dolan, just want to make sure you understand that this has been built. It's not going to be built, it's built.
I understand.
Okay.
What we will do is the board secretary will find the earliest date for which it can be legally advertised, and we will schedule it for that date. And as soon as Ms. Leggett has that date, Attorney Lynch, she will communicate that to you. Thank you. The indication appears the earliest would be Tuesday, January 17th, 2017. Thank you again. The next item on our agenda this evening is 364 Bridgeport Avenue, CDD2. This is the petition of Joseph Porto Esquire for site plan review, approval to construct a fast food restaurant with a drive-through on map 234, block 384, parcel 1, of which Bridgeport Empire LLC is the owner. Good evening, Attorney Porto.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. I'm Joe Porto. I practice law with Pratt, Porto, Parisi, and Caldwell. Our office is in Hamden, and I am before you this evening with regard to our representation of the applicant for a site plan application for 364 Bridgeport Avenue. The application envisions the construction of a freestanding Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through. By way of some quick housekeeping, the subject parcel sits in a CDD2 zone. The parcel is approximately 25,700 square feet, or 0.6 of an acre. Property is located at the corner of Cowles Street and Bridgeport Avenue. As I'm sure, as most of you, if not all of you know, the site is presently abandoned and vacant, and was last occupied as a gas station. The Commission may recall that we were before you in October with a application for this same site. That application involved a zone change along with a site plan and special permit applications. The zone change application was denied, and to the best of my recollection, the Commission did not reach the special permit or site plan applications. That brings us to this evening. So, thanks to the considerable effort by staff, and specifically Mr. Griffith and Mr. Sulkus, we were able to redesign the project and the building, and made the building a little bit smaller and than the one in the last application, to slightly decrease the amount of the parking, increase the amount of landscape buffer, and improve the circulation of traffic on the site. The change from the last application is the recognition of this Commission's decision to amend the regulations. This Commission made an amendment to the regulations of May in 2016 to separate a drive-in establishment from a drive-through establishment. And that very change permits drive-throughs in this particular zone. And you will note in Mr. Sulkus's administrative summary that that specific point is called out. An additional change is how the parking is being analyzed. In this application, the use is being treated as a fast food takeout restaurant, and under that analysis, it calls for one space per 250 square feet. It would total 8, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, Mr. Gordon will explain. We have considerably more than 8, and in fact, as many as 20 parking spaces, and that marks a divergence from the way that the parking was analyzed in the previous application. What I would like to do is have Mr. Gordon go over with you the application, the design, not the application, the design and of the building and of the site improvements, and then certainly respond to any questions that the Commission may have with regard to parking and any other questions it may have. I would just simply add by a closing comment that the application for site plan approval will greatly improve the existing site features. It will take a presently abandoned and vacant site and make it a vibrant, positive site with a state-of-the-art building, with robust landscaping, and will promote the health, safety, and welfare in the area, will certainly increase property values, and is by all means consistent with the comprehensive plan of providing sensible commercial growth that provides value to the community in this particular zone.
Thank you, Attorney Porto. Good evening, Mr. Gordon.
Good evening, Attorney Sutton. Commissioners, my name is Jeffrey Gordon. I'm president of Codaspodi and Associates, doing business at 263 Boston Post Road in Orange, Connecticut, representing the DeAndrea Corporation here this evening. And again, we are pleased to have the opportunity to revisit this site and try to enhance the area as best as we can, having heard many of the comments from staff and the commissioners. We were able to revisit the site, revisit the building size, as Attorney Porto mentioned. We have reduced the building considerably. As such, there was a proportionate reduction in parking, enabled us to increase buffers around, to increase the area for snow shelf, snow removal. We have met on site with the Sergeant Craniac from the traffic agent for the city of Milford. We dealt with Mike Kanios and Ron Ferris from the Connecticut Department of Transportation as to the use of this site for the Dunkin' Donuts with the drive-through, and we received favorable responses from both. The DOT only asked for a couple of minor things. They asked that we label our painted stop bar at the driveways. They asked that we put a note on our plans that the Connecticut Highway Department monuments be preserved and not disturbed. And they asked me to make a small adjustment in the drive-through queue because they had a concern that the 10th waiting position had a slight angle on it, so the rear left corner of a vehicle sitting there could actually project a little bit into the driveway as you project it through from the curb cut. So we're able to make those accommodations to satisfy those interests. Again, the building that we show is 1,840 square feet. We have an area that we designated for a patio or future expansion. If you were to consider this favorably and approve it either way, we would, if you approved it for an expansion, we might build it that way from the outset. But either way, the parking as calculated is more than enough to handle that. Also, one of the things that was a strong consideration in our earlier application was that our access to the rear parking area was a shared access with the drive-through lane. As reconfigured now, there is a specific separate 12-foot lane that serves as an access way, and then later on it's an exit or bypass lane to come out of the back or to get off of the queue if you decide you do not want to remain in the drive-through queue. Mr. Publiski from the engineering department had raised an issue about the drive-through lane being used as an access in the past. We provided a letter from Steve Ullman, a traffic engineer who actually has been a consultant to this commission on third-party reviews, and he indicated that when it was a drive-through access to the back, he didn't have an objection to it. I have since submitted through staff a revised letter from Mr. Ullman, having seen the revised plan, that he has even less concerns now that we have a designated separate lane from the drive-through lane, which will provide access to the parking in the rear. And looking at some of the points that were raised in the staff review, I just want to address on the landscaping plan first. Along Route 1, there is an existing evergreen hedge, and that would remain, and we would be extending it the full width of the frontage. We also have some plantings for the street buffer side on Cowles, but also we're reminded of Section 5.14.43 in your regulation that we have to have a balancing between this 3 to 4 foot high hedge or wall and maintaining the sight lines exiting the property, or for someone exiting it with people driving around the corner there. So we have the plantings, we have it at a height that we believe will meet the specifications. We would never extend higher than 3 feet. It might have to be field adjusted and lowered a little bit based on sight lines, but that's in harmony with your regulations. We also showed the 10 9x18 required waiting spaces. That's shown on the sheet SP2. So that meets your requirements. And again, we did, as I mentioned, just a little bit of an adjustment in the radiuses and the straight section of the drive-through lane as it comes out to Route 1, cared for the issue that Mr. Ferris had raised from the Department of Transportation. The other thing we also want to just always keep in mind is 10 waiting positions at a drive-through. More often than not, if there's 10 vehicles at the drive-through, people won't be the 11th. They'll usually go someplace else or park their car, but we did accommodate that, and we don't believe that there would be any issues with that. We do show along the property line to the east portion a landscaping buffer. In the parking area in the back, we have the requisite 10-foot buffer, and for the driveway that connects from front to back, we have a 4-foot planted buffer. We want to always be cognizant of the fact that what's immediately adjoining us is a used car lot with pavement almost within a foot of the property line. So we provided a buffer from them, and hopefully in the future, if they ever do any future development, they might be required to put in somewhat of a buffer from us. Also, what was also included on the plan and was commented on sheet SP2, we have a large landscape island that the drive-through and the bypass and the rear access lane loops around, and we put in a sidewalk there. And that sidewalk is for convenience to get to the dumpster area and for the people in the rear parking. There was a comment about, why is that there? It's there for convenience. If a painted crosswalk is the recommendation of this commission, by all means, we have no problem adding that. All the areas where there's landscaping are properly curbed. The plant materials have been set back, gives us protection for vehicle overhangs, gives us area for snow removal. There's ample area around the perimeters. And then on number 11 Cowell Street, which is the adjoining residential property, that property, I guess, was just recently transacted, and the owner, the current owner, Mr. Lisi, is here today, and we all are aware that there is this pentway, which is an old-fashioned easement. It's a 10-foot wide easement that's a remnant from the late 1800s, early 1900s for horse and buggy access when there used to be garages or carriage houses off of alleyways. All we have to do is leave that available for access. So we are putting up a vinyl screen fence, which this commission has the purview over in a landscaping buffer or a fence or a combination. But in this particular case, we cannot plant in the pentway, but we can put up the screen fence on the property line. And that pentway has a gate at the end of it, so if for some reason the owner of 11 Cowles doesn't want to go through their driveway to their backyard but wants to walk across our lawn area, they can do that too. There'll be a gate at the end of that pentway for them to access as well. We did provide a number of building elevations. And what we have done now is we've gone, the building is now primarily a brick building with scalloped vinyl cedar-like shingles for the gable ends, Cedar Impression or a similar brand. But the building itself is a Redland brick. Color is called that as Low Country. The area on the back, the walk-in cooler, will have a brick veneer, so it'll blend in with the whole balance of the building. So it's a pretty high-end finish, similar in finish to the other Dunkin' Donuts that Mr. DeAndrea built over on the Post Road. So we have predominantly a brick building, the vinyl gable ends as shown. We also provided a photometric plan that conforms to your regulations. The pole heights are 15 feet high, and they are going to be on concrete bases that'll extend 6 to 12 inches above grade. Also, that we were asked to provide calculations for the landscaping. We have more than adequate interior landscaping, not counting the buffer areas. Just even that main interior island alone gives us the 10% of the parking areas, but we have far in excess of that when you consider some of the other landscape areas. So as Attorney Porto said, it's a pretty robust planting plan for a property of this size. We have parking areas of 2,660 square feet, and front area of 4,994, combined for 7,654 square feet. So 10% would be 765 square feet. We have over 1,200 square feet just in that one interior island alone. So pretty robust response in that regard. So again, we have the parking. We have a dumpster area that we provided in the back, and I saw that we are providing for a chain link enclosure with vinyl slats. I guess there was a comment from staff about matching the building. The best way we could match the building, if you didn't want the vinyl slats, what we could do is put vinyl sided panels on the chain link galvanized post. Masonry enclosures of such size do not work. They get beat up pretty big, and we would really recommend against that. But we would go with what was shown on the detail sheet of the vinyl slats, or we could have a vinyl sided panels that could be bolted to the corner post to give you the color and texture similar to the gable ends of the building. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. At this time, Mr. Sulkus, do you have anything that you wish to add to what's been submitted as the administrative summary form?
Just one thing. The board cannot consider an outdoor seating site as part of this approval. The applicant would have to come back to the board by special permit, which is required for any outdoor customer dining areas for restaurants per 317.2.15. So that's off the table for this application this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, but we'd be happy if you would let us include that square footage as part of the building, if you so like.
I'm sure you would. Are there any questions from the board for the applicant? Mr. Nichol.
Yeah, in regard to this Pentway,
It's clearly designated beyond the cross-hatched area, and that is where we're proposing to put the new screen fence. So that will be that'll demarcate the property line. The Pentway in its entirety is on the applicant's property, but the adjoiner has full rights of access across that 10-foot strip, the full depth of his property.
is there a fence between the Pentway and the roadway?
There is a fence that comes down to there's a dashed driveway that is partially on 11 and partially in the Pentway. The fence begins at the back of that driveway, and that's what we... The fence starts right at this point here. There's the driveway here. The fence is all broken down here. We're proposing proposing to move the fence onto the property line, and that way they would have the full access through there. The fence does not go all the way out to the street line of Cowles.
So that would tell me that by the pickup window, the roadway, including the Pentway without a fence, is 22.9.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm concerned that the Public Works didn't comment. It's still pending. Also, I see that the police chief signed off on the traffic report. Why was that? And why didn't the Traffic Commission, the Milford Police Traffic Department sign off on that?
What happened was the Traffic Commission signed off on the original application. As you recall, I met with the agent, Sergeant Craniac, out on site, and what happened was that the December meeting was canceled. So the chief, in light of the zoning hearing, authorized the approval.
Well, I don't recognize that. I'm sorry. Also, I see that the Health Department has some comments that need to be addressed on the pollution caused by the idling cars, and I don't see anything on that.
Okay, as we commented last time, it was kind of a nebulous comment. We had responded to them. Studies on idling cars do not relate to something of this nature. The vast majority of the studies that we had discovered, we researched it, have to do with idling trucks. They have to do with diesel vehicles, not so much for the general internal combustion vehicles that are in line for a couple of minutes. And basically, it really is not germane to this type of a use, but it was a comment. I do agree that they made it, but all the studies that we had were talking about double parked trucks in urban environments, idling diesel trucks at truck stops, and things of that nature. So they never really did cite a specific report. They just rendered an opinion on that.
They never came back with a letter stating what you just stated, that it's doesn't deal with combustion engine trucks or buses or diesels. It's just with the diesels.
This was a letter that we provided to Ms. Miller on September 27th, a copy of which I can show you if you would like. Ms. Miller never responded to it. I would also point out, to the extent it's of any interest, that when we were here in October, we had provided notice to some maybe 67 to 70 people, and not one person came or and spoke in opposition or expressed any concern of this issue, about this issue.
Another question for you. I was hoping that in the traffic report it would have something to do with the stacking on Coles Street.
I'm not sure I understand. Stacking on Cowles Street?
Cowles Street.
What kind of stacking? I'm just not sure.
Coming out of the drive-in, the drive-through.
Well, we have the requisite is 10 cars from the service window plus 2 exiting vehicles, which is what we show on the plans. So which additional plans are we talking about? Which additional stacking are we looking at?
From the driveway to the traffic light or Bridgeport Avenue, what's the distance and how many cars can you get in there?
Are you talking about over here? It's probably about 50 feet or so to the stop bar.
Sorry?
It's probably about 50 feet from the stop bar to the backside of our driveway. So about 2 to 3 vehicles.
That'd be about 2.5 cars.
I think that's about pretty good accurate.
Thank you.
Are there additional questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, does anyone wish to make a motion relative to the application? Mr. Quish.
I would like to make a motion to approve the proposed development and make that contingent on complying with any engineering, traffic, and any requirements of the city for building permits, including the buffers that were recommended, and just taking the recommendations that were presented in the reports as part of the approval.
Is there a second? Mr. Moore. Does anyone wish to be heard on the motion? Mr. Quish.
I'd just like to say that this property has been vacant and kind of blighted in an eyesore. For me, it feels like decades. I don't really know how long it's been either abandoned as it was or demolition having happened, and it's just being an eyesore in the community. And I welcome the development, and I think it's a great thing for our neighborhood, and I encourage it and hope that this board approves it.
Does anyone else wish to be heard as to the motion?
Yes.
Mr. Marlowe.
About putting a painted crosswalk from the back parking lot. I was wondering if we could include that in this motion as well.
Mr. Marlowe, would you like to amend the motion to include that, please?
Yeah, I would encourage the recommendation of my colleague to be included in my motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Quish, for the record, could you repeat that?
Mr. Quish, Mr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Marlowe, because Phyllis couldn't hear you, if you could.
I was just asking to, I'd like to amend the motion Mr. Quish did to add a painted crosswalk from the back parking lot to the sidewalk.
Thank you, Mr. Marlowe. Is there a second to the amended motion?
Second.
Does anyone wish to be heard on the amended motion?
Yeah,
Mr.
I would.
Lutz.
I would just like to add on to what Mr. Quish said. In fact, I was even talked to by the alderman from this particular district that they were very, very happy to see this development go through, because that lot has been a mess for a long time. Okay, and I also hope that the board approves this.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the motion presently on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call the question to a vote. All in favor of the amended motion? All opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Attorney Porto. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight are liaison reports. Are there any liaisons that have reports? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the Regulation Subcommittee. Mr. Grant is not with us this evening. I don't believe there was a meeting in December of the Regulation Subcommittee, so there will be no Regulation Subcommittee report. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the Tuesday, December 6, 2016 meeting. Does anyone wish to make a motion relative to the approval of those minutes? Mr. Panzella. Is there a second? Mr. Marlowe. Anyone wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. The motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. First item that I have this evening is we received a schedule of meetings for the 2017 calendar year. We received that, I believe, in our packets and also another copy today. It requires our approval before it goes into effect. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the schedule for 2017? Mr. Quish, is there a second? Mr. Panzella. All in favor? The motion passes. The second item that I have this evening, this is my last meeting as this board's chairman, and I want to take the opportunity to thank the members of the board for the opportunity to be their chairman. I enjoyed working with each and every one of you, and I am very proud of this board. I think it's a wonderful representation of the city of Milford. I think this is a board that works together truly for the best interests of the city and the residents of the city of Milford. I've not found this to be a partisan board. We've had a very partisan year in our electoral politics, but I think consistently this board has done what they think is in the best interest of the city, and done so, I think, in a collaborative and professional manner. I'd be certainly remiss if I didn't thank David Sulkus and Phyllis Leggett for all of the work that they have done and all of the help they provided, Mr. Joseph Griffith as well. And again, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to be the chairman. And I have all of the faith in the world. Ed Mead is going to be a fantastic chairman in 2017, and I look forward to being his vice chairman and working with all of you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
The next item on the agenda is the staff report. Mr. Sulkus, do you have a report this evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your service. You rank right up there with the best chairs that we've had. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Quish.
I'd like to just echo that and say that from the very first meeting, which was a bee's nest, and you came in raw, and you've done a really great job, and I want to thank you for being so professional and helping us through difficult times, and my accolades are to you for doing a great job. Thank you very much, Mr. Sutton.
Very welcome. Thank you. I was hoping this would be more like a Friars Club roast, but we'll have to do that at the holiday
Next time,
party.
yeah.
Seeing no further comment, does anyone wish to make a motion to adjourn? Mr. Quish, is there a second? Mr. Marlowe, we stand adjourned. Thank you.